The sounds of the Ukrainian war echo in the cities of Russia. Cities of the Russian Federation near the Ukrainian border have been frequently attacked by drones since the start of the war. There have been a number of critical attacks on Russian military infrastructure, such as airports, military depots, fuel depots, and even Russian munitions and military vehicle factories. The most important purpose of these attacks is to make Russia uneasy and demoralize Russia. The war potential of a country that cannot resist the attacks within its borders will also be interrupted. Thus, Ukraine will be one step closer to victory. While Ukraine continues its struggle to liberate its homeland, Russia is struggling with explosions. The last of these explosions occurred in the strategic Russian city of Bryansk the other day. Russia's robot tank factory was engulfed in flames in the Dyatkovo settlement in the Bryansk region of the Russian Federation. The military facility was the only one of its kind in Russia. The fire started at 8:28 am. Emergency crews came to the scene and gave first aid. It was reported that the fire was extinguished at 9:13 am. As a result of the work of 5 firefighters. According to preliminary data, no casualties were reported in the region. The cause of the fire remains unclear. However, considering the attacks that have taken place in Russia since the beginning of the Ukraine war, the allegations that the facility was attacked by sabotage are getting stronger. Officials did not release any reports on the fire or its consequences. It should also be noted that the city of Dyatkovo is located in the northeast of the Bryansk region. The distance to the Ukrainian border is more than 140 kilometers. This is the distance that Ukraine's kamikaze drones can easily reach. The fact that Kiev has Storm Shadow missiles with a range of 250 kilometers leaves Russian cities near the border vulnerable. On the other hand, the Alexander Research and Production Company, besides producing Russian Uran-9 robot tanks, works under the order of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation for the design and development of high-precision optical pots and systems, especially for aviation, space, military, and special equipment. The enterprise made a difference by producing the Uran-9 tracked unmanned ground light tank with its own products. The unmanned light tank is designed for fire support of ground forces during hostilities and reconnaissance. Russian Uran-9 robot tanks are extremely deadly. The Russian army first used the Uran-9 robot tank in Syria, and recently it is also using it on the Ukrainian fronts. Russian-made Uran-9 robot tanks are specifically designed to provide combined combat reconnaissance and counter-terrorism units with remote reconnaissance and fire support. The Uran-9 can be used fully autonomously on a predefined route or can be operated manually by a person from a truck control station or via small backpack control station. The Uran-9 is armed with a 30mm Shipunov 272 automatic cannon for ready-to-launch 9M121 Ataka NATO reporting name, Spiral 2 anti-tank guided missiles, and 6 ready-to-fire guided missiles. The Uran-9 can also be armed with 4 Igla surface-to-air missiles. On each side of the tower, there are 2 Ataka launchers and 3 Shmom anti-tank missiles. The attack missile has radio command guidance and is also beam riding using SACLOS. This missile was designed to defeat tanks with composite armor and explosive reactive armor. It has an operating range of 400 meters to 6 kilometers. The Shmol flamethrower is a mechanical incendiary device designed to project a long controllable stream of fire. As of December 2022, 342 Uran-9 robot tanks were in service in the Russian army, but Ukraine may have destroyed several dozen of these special tanks of the Russians at the front as a result of the air attack on the Uran-9 tank factory in the Bryansk region. Russia's capacity to produce military equipment has decreased, and the Russian army had to stop the operation of the only Uran-9 robot tank factory. This is seen as a very serious success for Ukraine. The factory, which produces the Uran-9 tank, also produces lenses and glasses for night vision binoculars that work with electro-optical devices. In addition, the company's products include spherical devices, sighting devices, variable and focal length lenses, including thermal imaging lenses and infrared rangefinders Mira and Mira prism optical systems, laser beam conversion systems, and various non-standard products. As it is known, Bryansk is frequently exposed to Ukrainian attacks. A tragic event in the skies of the Bryansk region on May 13 resulted in the loss of 11 pilots and the destruction of 2 Russian Mi-8 combat helicopters, a Su-35 fighter, and a Su-34 fighter bomber. According to the Russian edition, Russian planes and helicopters were shot down by the American Patriot anti-aircraft missile system. Given the range at which Ukrainian air defense systems operate, it turns out that Kiev has deployed them only 40 kilometers from the Russian border. It should be noted that other versions of the tragic event have been put forward before one of these versions was attributed to Ukrainian saboteurs. It was alleged that Ukrainian saboteurs entered the Klintsovsky area of Bryansk and shot down the planes using portable anti-aircraft missile systems. Another version indicated that the destruction of Russian aircraft could be carried out by the armed forces of Ukraine, operating from the Chernihiv region. There was no official statement from the Russian authorities regarding the attacks. The smokescreen over the tragic event still remains. In addition, this week, the Bryansk region was also frequented by unmanned aerial vehicles. According to an official of the Russian Ministry of Health, about 10 unmanned aerial vehicles were shot down in the attempted attack in the Bryansk region of Russia. According to the report, the official stated that some of the drones fell near the village of Kahanovchi in the Klimovsky district of Bryansk, and some were shot down. The official stressed that other drones were shot down by electronic warfare systems. The official also reported that the drones did not cause any destruction. On the other hand, the Russians blew up the road between the Chernihiv region and Bryansk. The road is located on the border of Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. It is located in St. Kievska Chernihiv region. In February, the governor of the Bryansk region, Alexander Bogomazov, exhibited structures built on the territory of the region. At the same time, the Russians are building fortifications on their territory to protect them from Ukrainian attacks. Inside these fortifications, the Dragon's Teeth were quite remarkable. Dragon's Teeth is an anti-tank barrier fortification first used during World War II. These were used to block the movement of tanks and mechanized infantry and be dispatched to the killing zones. But there is a detail that Russia has forgotten. This detail is that the Ukrainian armed forces are equipped with Western tanks. The Ukrainian army is broadcasting exercises where it grinds Dragon Teeth with British Challenger 2 tanks. Members of the Ukrainian armed forces conduct offensive training against obstacles known as Dragon's Teeth using British Challenger 2 tanks. This is a new step in the training of the Ukrainian army and allows them to more effectively overcome the obstacles set by the enemy. It seems that Russia is in a rather passive and helpless position in the face of Ukraine's attacks. We will see in the coming days whether Russia, which applied tactics from the Second World War to strengthen its defense, succeeds. Attacks on Russian cities, however, frustrate Moscow's defensive measures. Not only Bryansk, but also Belgorod, Rostov, and Krasnodar are exposed to Ukrainian attacks. For example, drones attack the Afipskaya oil refinery in Russia's Krasnodar Krai. Earlier yesterday, dramatic footage of flames reaching the skies at a Russian oil refinery has surfaced online after Russian authorities reported that the country had carried out a drone attack on 2 oil facilities in the Krasnodar region. Huge flames were seen in videos circulating online that reportedly showed the fire at the Afipskaya facility. The Afipskaya oil refinery is located in the south of Russia, not far from the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk. The port of Novorossiysk was the headquarters of the Russian Black Sea Fleet until the annexation of Crimea in 2014. Since then, Russia has transferred the headquarters to the occupied port city of Sevastopol. On May 28, a major fire also broke out at the Ilsoil refinery, about 55 kilometers northeast of Novorossiysk. Local officials claim that a drone attack also caused the fire. Drone attacks on the Ils refinery on May 4th and May 5th were also reported by Russian authorities. The attacks caused fires at the facilities. In recent weeks, there have been increasing reports of attacks on rail networks and oil refineries on Russian soil. Drone attacks were also reported in various spots of Russia, including the oil unit of the Druzhba pipeline refinery in the Tver region of Russia. The focus has been on the power game, on deterrence and the potential threats faced by the regions in these days when it's seen that a return to a superpowers policy is seen with the invasion movement initiated by Russia on the territory of Ukraine. Russia's goal of dominating all the world's seas was an ideal from the Soviet Union era. This desire, combined with Russia's desire to go to warm seas, continued to increase over time. However, the stubbornness of Russia has caused NATO to put serious pressure on the Russian Navy in recent days. Last year, a tension line starting from the Baltic Sea has extended to the interior of the Mediterranean. For a long time, Russia's global role over naval capabilities south of the Arctic Ocean, the Baltic Sea, and the North Atlantic, as well as its nuclear deterrence, has been the focus of growing debate. Today, with the Russia-Ukraine war, the recent crises have started to come up again. Concerns have also grown over Russia's expanding underwater capabilities and dangers to critical underwater infrastructure since Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. However, no matter what, Russia has a naval power that has been feeding and growing for many years. Well, with this navy, can Russia come into contact with NATO? Let's examine this issue in detail together and reveal how the Russian Navy had to flee from NATO Navy ships in recent days. Divine Justice offers you the most accurate information. Collectively, we work 24/7 to provide you with the fastest and most accurate information. You can support us by subscribing to our channel because of its strategic breadth and opportunities for covert action. The maritime domain has become the most prominent arena of great power competition today. In the shadow of this conflict and Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, the Baltic Sea has now become the focal point of geopolitical interests and conflicts. The Baltic Sea is of greater importance to Russia than any other sea because the port of St. Petersburg has hosted the Russian Navy for centuries and is considered the safest port of the Russian Navy. For this reason, after the crisis that started with the Ukraine war, it becomes impossible for Russia, which has widened relations with NATO, to solve the crisis in the Baltic. With the war in Ukraine in full swing, many Western states, such as the Norwegian Intelligence Service, are warning of the growing importance of Russia's nuclear deterrence in the Arctic waters of the far north. As the importance of nuclear weapons and strategic deterrence increases, so does the Northern Fleet's defense of military bases in Kola, the North Bastion, and the Barents Sea. According to the evaluations, it is stated that Russia will maintain, modernize, and develop its nuclear arsenal, but they may be a significant change in its nuclear doctrine in the coming years. On the other hand, Norwegian intelligence reported that Russia has deployed nuclear missile carriers in the Arctic for the first time since the collapse of the USSR. It is noted that during the Soviet era, warships of the Northern Fleet regularly sailed with nuclear weapons. But this is the first time that the modern Russian Federation has done the same. The key part of the nuclear potential is in submarines and surface ships of the Northern Fleet. Norwegian intelligence reported tactical nuclear weapons pose a particularly serious threat in the various operational scenarios in which NATO countries may be involved. It was also warned that Russia has submarine capabilities, anti-satellite weapons, and cyber capabilities that could threaten Norway and the alliance. Ongoing tensions between Russia and the West mean that Russia will remain the biggest nuclear threat to NATO, and thus Norway. It cannot be ruled out that a local war could escalate into a wider conflict with direct military intervention from Russia, the USA, NATO, and Norway. The Norwegian intelligence report comes days before Russia's one-year-old war in Ukraine is over. Ukraine's defense intelligence has previously stated that it considers Russia's threats of using tactical nuclear weapons against Ukraine too high. It deployed tactical nuclear-armed ships in the Baltic Sea for the first time in 3 decades. It is stated that the ships belong to the Northern Fleet of Russia. A key portion of the nuclear potential resides in the Northern Fleet submarines and surface ships. In response to the war against Ukraine and Russian naval activities in the Baltic Sea, the coastal states put their armies in a state of increased readiness. In the midst of this crisis, NATO allies and future allies are caught in an unnecessary debate over force arrangements, new structures, and leadership roles. NATO armies became increasingly concerned about Russia's underwater capabilities. NATO armies are gravely concerned that Moscow's attack and ballistic missile submarines and special-purpose underwater vessels could be used to threaten or attack their economic and military infrastructures. On the other hand, Russia showed power to the USA. Admiral Gorshkov destroyed naval targets from the 130mm AK-132M Universal Naval Artillery Mount was fired at a target, imitating a fake enemy ship located at a distance of more than 10 kilometers. Objective means of control confirmed the defeat of the target to counter high-precision weapons. Electronic warfare systems solved the jam. Also, a detachment of the ships of the Northern Fleet conducted an exercise on the transfer of liquid cargo on the move in the Atlantic Ocean. Diesel fuel and fresh water reserves were replenished from the medium-sea tanker, Admiral Gorshkov destroyed naval targets in the Atlantic Ocean with the help of naval artillery. There was only one explanation for the moves made by the Russian Navy. Putin appears to have mobilized the most important ships of the Russian Navy to intimidate NATO. However, in the face of these threats, NATO began to chase both the submarines and warships of the Russian Navy in different seas. What do we mean by chasing is an open, menacing gait? The menacing march of NATO-affiliated Navy ships in both the Baltic and the Arctic recently caused Russian warships and Russian submarines to tuck their tails and flee. NATO concerns about Russia's strategic nuclear submarines and warships first began 50 years ago with the development of Yankee-class as in increasing strategic submarines and ships in general became extremely important to Cold War strategies. It was calculated that the existing strategic submarines would be effective at a distance of 2 to 3 days from the U.S. coast. In addition, most of the ships have the ability to fire their missiles underwater, which is currently perceived as a significant threat. The emergence of these capabilities, which are quieter in water and equipped with longer-range missiles than their predecessors, was a turning point for NATO leaders. NATO has finally acknowledged that lesbians are capable of truly strategic strikes and pose a significant threat. We can say that this is the most effective explanation for the south of the Arctic Ocean and the Soviet Northern Fleet's positioning at the center of NATO's strategy. Looking back for a long time, the Soviet gradual advances in the Navy and maritime field and the concerns that had become a strategically important weapon were hardly taken into account by NATO leaders. The strategic nuclear deterrent submarines, which will protect the center of Russia's second strike capability and the regions they are protected, maintained their importance for Russia after the Cold War. But for the past 2 decades, academics, politicians, and many military forces have been less focused on nuclear deterrence as they have been engaged in operational deployments outside NATO's borders. As a result, we should not ignore nuclear deterrence while dealing with the conflicts of the last 2 decades. Today the world sees us surrounded by NATO and Russian navies. The goal of the power struggles of both sides is essentially economic and geostrategic. Various confrontations are currently occurring in the Mediterranean, Black Seas, and Baltics. Even if the Ukrainian armed forces shot down most of the Russian cruise missiles, it cannot stop. All the Russian missiles landed in Lviv on the Eastern European border. These attacks on Lviv and Russia's ongoing attitude since the first day of the occupation caused the Eastern European countries to increase their defenses. Poland became the prominent country in Eastern Europe, sharing a long border with Belarus and Ukraine. NATO provided very strong troop support to Poland, while the Polish armed forces developed its military arsenal and stockpiled many weapons on the border. We can count the M102 V3 Abrams as the most powerful of these weapons. Normally, Poland agreed to supply 250 M102 Abrams tanks by 2025, in its first agreement with the USA. However, the aggressive stance of Russia and the possibility of attacking NATO allies in Eastern Europe after Ukraine encouraged the Pentagon to send Abrams to Poland as soon as possible. Pulling forward in M102 Abrams V3 shipments, Poland is developing its army with 15 Abrams per month and deploying this world's most advanced main battle tanks at its military bases on the Polish-Ukrainian border. The total of 30 M102 Abrams V3 tanks are thought to be in Poland at the moment. The placement of these tanks on the Polish territory on the Lviv border will be used as a deterrent against the Russian army. At the same time, the presence of U.S. Army units and tanks in the region is seen as a deterrent for Russia. There are several other important titles in the Polish shipment of the M102 Abrams tank. The first of these is whether a superior weapon such as the M102 Abrams V3 can be shipped to Ukraine. In the first period of this shipment, it was said that if such a powerful weapon was delivered to the Ukrainian armed forces, the Russian army would be completely helpless. However, this situation was not brought to the agenda in any way because it would not be accepted by the USA, because sending such a powerful tank to Ukraine would involve very serious risks that could fuel the conflict between the USA and Russia. Also yesterday, Russian President Vladimir Putin reacted sharply to the sending of advanced long-range missile systems or heavy weapons to Ukraine. And he firmly stated that if the shipments continued after that, he would hit areas that he had not hit before. It was not specified which regions it was and where it could attack. However, shipments to Ukraine are usually made via the Polish border, and Russia may be likely to target that area here. Poland's acquisition of Abrams tanks would mean that it would be able to send hundreds of Soviet-era T-72 upgraded tanks in its military arsenal to Ukraine. This is thought to be the main purpose of the urgent dispatch of the M1A2 Abrams to Poland. Another issue was the shipment of M1A2 Abrams tanks to Poland and Poland's large tank shipment to Ukraine. Poland delivered 232 Tesla 72 tanks to the armed forces of Ukraine. Soon after the shipment of M1A2 Abrams tanks accelerated in the delivery of the first 15 was completed. With this move, there were great changes in the fate of the ground operation in Ukraine, with the shipment of T-72s in the hands of Poland to Ukraine. Ukraine immediately started to use these tanks actively in the region. It is reported that these tanks are currently fighting on the front lines in the Kherson, Severodonetsk, and Kharkiv regions. So why are the M1A2 Abrams tanks such important tanks, and why were their shipments to Poland brought forward? Let's take a closer look at this issue together and examine it more deeply. M1 Abrams tanks are actually older tanks over 40 years old, known as the children of the Cold War. But despite being over 40 years old, Abrams has been upgraded to keep up with Russia's new tanks, like the T-90 and Armata. So how is this modernization possible? The M1A2 Abrams are described by war experts as very attractive. Bent steel. There is no need to explain the M1A2 Abrams at length. It is already known by everyone that they are groundbreaking vehicles in war. However, it is necessary to focus on the features that make this tank stand out. M1A2 Abrams stand out with their thick armor, speed, maneuverability, and guns hitting and destroying their targets with precision. The M1 Abrams originally had the 105mm L52M68A1 rifled gun. The rifle creates more friction in the tube and therefore a smoothbore gun is more preferable. The M1 graduated to the M1A1 version in 1985. During this development period, the tank was armed with a more powerful 120mm L44m² 56A1 smoothbore gun. The RH-120 is a 120mm smoothbore tank gun designed and manufactured in former West Germany by the Rheinmetall Tech AG company. These are extremely powerful and devastating weapons that are also used on the latest German Leopards. Abrams fires a high-explosive anti-tank shell and a powerful depleted uranium shell from this 120mm artillery gun high-explosive obstacle reduction projectile for destroying lightly armored vehicles and bunkers. The depleted uranium shell acts as a shotgun and destroys the enemy's armor. The M1A2 Abrams consists mainly of rolled homogeneous armor, steel plating, and British capped cobalt composite armor. It also has depleted uranium armor layers. This high-density 1.7 times denser than lead-free uranium armor mesh provides outstanding protection and is added to the hull in front of the turret of the tank. This gives it a very large degree of protection, even against anti-tank projectiles, which are especially prominent in Ukraine. But you need a very powerful engine to carry such a powerful armor. It is very unlikely that you can beat the engine of the M1A2 Abrams. It has a 1500 horsepower Honeywell AGD 1500 gas turbine engine that can use different fuels. It has a torque of 2,768 ft at 3,000 revolutions per minute. The gas turbine was once a type of helicopter engine converted into power tanks. The maximum speed of this engine is 68 km, and it surpasses many rival tanks in this regard. It can also cover almost 450 km on a single full tank. In addition, the engine runs much quieter than other tank engines, which makes it stand out in sudden city raids. On top of these features, the U.S. military has given Abrams excellent communication systems, enviable fire targeting, and durable countermeasures, along with the latest developments. Since the M1A2 was introduced, it has been developed in many variants. The latest of these variants will be set PV2, PV3, and soon 4 for the first edition. First delivered to the U.S. Army in 1999, included improved armor protection, improved system components, and more importantly, improved computer components. PV2 builds on SEP by adding a remote-controlled weapon station. Abrams' latest and modernized configuration PV3 is now considered the foundation for the future of incremental upgrades released in 2017. CPV3 adds additional armor, including explosive reactive armor, as well as a trophy active protection system. The trophy system is a hard-to-kill system designed to fire shotgun-like blasts to take down incoming threats. In addition, the manually loaded 120mm .256 smoothbore cannon can reliably and accurately hit targets almost 3 miles away. This makes it a formidable weapon on the field. While the M1A2 Abrams are already very powerful weapons, the PV3 version of the M1A2 Abrams has made it one of the eyes of the battlefield, and the king is on his way to reclaim his throne. One thing is for sure: as Abrams SEP variants progress, they will see a lot more customers than the US Army alone. We talked about the 250 M1A2 Abrams PV3 agreement that Poland made at the beginning of the year. In addition, it has signed an agreement with the USA for 75 QP PV3 in Australia. It seems that the demands of the Eastern European countries for these unique tanks are increasing day by day, particularly NATO member countries which want to strengthen their army maneuvers in the face of a possible aggressive attitude of Russia, want to increase their offensive power in ground operations by adding these tanks to their inventory. Even if Russia is thought to have lost a quarter of its army in Ukraine at the moment, Putin could increase his aggression at any moment. Regardless, Russia is the country with the second strongest army in the world, and it should be everyone's primary goal to have weapons that can respond to the weight of its attacks. Thanks you for watching us.